Hello and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben.
And I'm Swizz.
And thank you for joining us. We are going through the ruck line. It is the set and forget, except we have so many more options than we've ever had before, Swizz. Normally, when we do our top 5 ruck line, we are actually extending it a little bit this year to make it a top 8, which is pretty much where we're at because Swizz, my favorite 8 out of 10 man. How are you today?
Yeah. Well, mate, I'm good. But you're right about the top 8 because I know we were giving each other a bit of crap on the in the draft where you were trying to get me to take a ruck early. And I was just like, there's so many of them this year, mate. There's no rush in them. You can pick one up a bit later because it runs deep and we like that.
I hate slow drafts because I'd rather you don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, hang on a second. Let me just go into my spreadsheet, get rid of every single player that's taken, add up which position everyone's taking. You don't want to be that guy, right? So it evens the field a little bit. I thought 12 draft league, and it wasn't the fact that you hadn't got a ruck there, Swizz. It was the fact that you had pretty much the best midfield, and everyone was just leaving these rucks there. I'm like, how have you left Witts? How have you left the only good rucks left? I think there were 2 good rucks. I'm like, how? Like Briggs and Witts. How? Like Swizz, if you get those players, it's game over. Like you can't let someone have the 4 best midfielders and get a quality ruck in a draft league. So I was a little bit of panicking there, and luckily a few people bought into my hysteria because I was like, well, it's a cash league, guys, so game over. If Swizz gets the 4 best midfielders and a ruck, we are all cooked. Anyway, that brings us to our ruck line. We are going best averaging rucks. It might not be the highest total points, but we're going to work number 1 down because I think that's where the depth will be a little bit. And it's going to be interesting, Swizz. So number 1, have you ventured left field or are you sitting?
Unlike the forwards, my list is probably as vanilla as it gets for the rucks. So mine is the big fella, Timmy English. I can't move past him for what he would. I don't know if I want to start him in standard just because of the price compared to some of the value options. But if I was in a draft league and I had to choose a ruck first up, it's Tim English. Like he's the clear number 1.
Now, are you happy enough with English because he does get around the ground and he, links up, gets, some clearances sometimes. He links up, gets marks 4 to 50. Is that where you think that the points are still going to be really coming for him?
Yeah, and he even impacts the scoreboard. So he does it all. I don't know if it's going to be as good as last year. Like last year was just a freak season. Potentially, get bevoed a little bit, maybe run lob a little bit more through that midfield, maybe give Sam Darcy a little bit more opportunity. Like I'm not talking a huge amount. It might be a 5% drop off. It's still potentially there to go in the 120s. But it's just enough when you're comparing some of these other options we'll talk about is why I don't think I'd want to start him because there's a couple of rucks where I think he's, 280K, maybe even more expensive and what you can sort of do with that large amount of money. But I'm not knocking anybody who does start him because he doesn't have an early buy. If he's fit and ready to go and he looked good the other day, it's hard not to start him.
Yeah, and that's the big issue, isn't it? The price point anyway, when it comes to standard with English, I think what cherry to English is about 300,000. So when you kind of go, oh, I'd rather, would you rather English and a Huswaite or someone or other, or would you rather a Cherry and a Nick Martin? That's the kind of difference you're looking at. So you can balance out the points. Difference being is you're probably going to have to trade out Cherry, but at least, hey, Nick Martin, you might be able to keep. So that's the real kind of cost versus benefit ratio that you are looking at when it comes to spending up big with a premium like this. Now, I've also got him number 1, Swizz. My concern, though, is with this new ability to kind of use your arm to hold off your opponent. Yes, he's a tall guy and he's got long limbs. I am a little bit concerned. I don't know about, you might be able to correct this, Swizz. Is he the best, like a really good tap ruckman, though? Is it more because he does get around the ground and get those clearances and link up? Because up against a bigger ruck, your Grundy, your Darcy's, your Briggs, etc. I think he could get exploited with that new rule. So that's my concern.
Oh, yeah. But at the same time, I think he just dominates the lesser rucks. Like against the Hawks on the weekend, they had Reeves in the ruck. But an English scored 134 and missed 2 goals. Like it could have been a 160 game. And that's the problem because of his movements around the ground and his ability to dominate in the air, the lesser rucks. I feel like I'm being a little harsh there, but his ceiling is just massive. So I think, okay, probably comes back in some of those games, but not a lot changes in those, better matchups for him.
Yeah, and speaking of better matchups, round 3 against the Eagles that are pretty much ruckless. So that's kind of what you're talking about, which is where I would love to have him in my side. Geelong after that as well. So you have, Stanley or, Conway or someone like that. Essendon. So you're probably looking at Goldie, which you'd imagine at that point. Otherwise, there is, and Hawks as well, probably around 7 or so, Richmond around 8 or so, something like that. So there is a lot of scope there. The one thing I did notice about the Bulldogs, though, is that when English was actually charging forward to lose his opponent ruck and get into that forward line, a lot of the Dogs are kind of like putting on the little cheeky kind of blocks against the opposite ruckman to give him a little bit more of that clearance to be able to actually get some gains going forward. So that's the one part I think the Dogs are really looking to work with English and help free him up. So that way, if they see another ruck kind of lagging along behind English, they're kind of getting into him just a little bit, just to kind of slow him down. And I really expect to see that as well against Melbourne. So the first one is we get a nice kind of game. Was it round 1 official? So it's going to be interesting. We won't get an early look at English, but if I could have the extra money, I would. And the only way that happens now is probably going from, say, an Elliot Yeo, if you had him maybe down to a Zach Williams, and then you might be able to go up and into that. But again, is it worth it? So, I'm not going to have a go at anyone that's going English because he is only about 10 to 12%, I think, which is good when you're looking at probably the best ruckman in the comp. But it's with the trades that you have available, sometimes you can't pick them all. And spending up that much money on a ruck is definitely something to be careful about, is what I would say. I've got him 1 as well. So number 2, I'll start this time. I've got Gawny boy, number 2. Now, when Grundy was out of that side, Gawn was clear number 1, came out and had, that 200 game, which was crazy because I think I had him in my side because I couldn't afford English at that point. So, look, but I think he looks fit and he's the leader of that club. And with all the crap that's going on, he's the one that's kind of trying to rally everyone together. Even today when they're talking about, debutantes and the rest of it, he is really that sort of leader figure where he's trying the best to get the most out of these guys. And he's the sort of person I think would put everything on his back and say, you come with me and I'll take the pressure off you. And he definitely seems like that kind of person. So for me, Max Gawn, good price, good scoring potential. And if he's fit, I think he's number 2, Swizz.
I don't have no. I was going to say I don't have him. Of course, he's number 2, and I nearly put him number 1. So I went and watched the Tigers and the D's play down at Casey. He got annoyed when the one time Samson Ryan beat him in the ruck, and then I think he also gave him away a free kick, and he was so frustrated. And of that, like the fact he was taking a match sim that seriously, he came off at halftime, and we just watched him run laps, and he was like they had to. The staff
Running
had to
laps
say he was
at
running
halftime.
laps in the heap at halftime, and the staff was like, "Okay, now Gawny, you've done enough. You've got to come off now, mate." Like he was looking so physically fit, in for a massive year, and would not surprise me at all if he is number 1 overall at the end of the season if he keeps his body right and gets his goal kicking right. Because that's probably the 2 things that probably let Gawny down the most. The rest of his game is just brilliant. It's set up for these sort of ruck contests. And I don't understand why he isn't in everybody's team.
He just needs to keep roosting it from 60 meters out. That's where he's more accurate. He runs that big, long, slow arc and just bang, belts it 60 meters straight through the middle. That's what he needs to be. It's that awkward 25 meters out straight in front that makes Membry shake. Those kind of ones. Or no, was it not Membry? It was the Saints guy, the bloody, missed from literally point to blank. I can't even remember now. Played for Dogs, I think broke his something. Anyway. I'm trying to think of something that missed right in front. Anyway. So number 2, you've got Gawn as well. Number
Gawn,
3
it
for
should be
you.
locked 100%. If you do not have Gawn in your team right now, go and edit your team and put Gawn in. R1, R2, I don't care.
Not only that, if you didn't watch the game, just gone Melbourne Carlton, right, where they played Pitney for a bit and they're like, this isn't really working, and they kind of changed it up. Max Gawn, 185 Supercoach.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
literally 2 goals, 30 hit outs, 24 disposals in a practice match, right? And he pretty much had, was it Pitney for part of it? Then he had, was it bloody, who's the other ruck, Swizz?
DeConning.
De
TD.
Conning and then
Yeah.
Mackay,
Yeah.
sort of up in that point. But you go and have a look at it, and it's just
He is
ridiculous.
so hungry, mate. So hungry this year. It's going huge. So
If you
no
haven't,
doubt, just waste our time talking about those two anymore.
no, but
Number
we can
three.
we can
Yeah.
revel in it though a little bit, because the other part was so hit outs, obviously time of ground as well. So Maxi Gawn is pretty much right up there. So I was just trying to have a look at Maxi Gawn. There he is. And also only played 74% time on ground. That's the part I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
So 185 Supercoach of 74% time on ground. Crazy. Has to be in your standard side.
Insane.
Crazy. Number 3, you start, Swizz.
Yeah, number 3. Again, no surprise here. I really wanted to put my man at 4, and that's not Richmond Man. There's a guy that I really love, but it's it's Marshall from St Kilda. It's hard not to have him at 3. Like, he was a little bit poor early, and I just gave away some free kicks against Cherry in the ruck, and that's probably the worry a little bit there. Marshall getting his head around these new ruck contests.
I never would have known Swizzy gave away free kicks against with the messages
you
you
would
were
have
sending me.
no idea about
No
that.
idea. Oh, Cherry looks good, Ben. Oh,
flooding
Marshall,
the
3
group
free
chat. Look
kicks
how crap
against and a
Marshall
blood
is.
rule. Can't even stay on the park. He's messaging me, this guy.
Anyone that watched St Kilda GWS final last year sees how good Marshall can be as sole ruck. Just completely kept St Kilda in that game single-handedly, dominated it. I don't think there's any real growth. I think if you're paying what's Marshall, like 6 off the top of my head, maybe 660. Help me out here, Benny, because I don't. Oh, there it is. 640, 639. Right. I think that's what he's around that mark anyway. You're not going to get any value out of him. You'd just be picking him for that price. And the problem is their buy. So they don't have the early buy, which is a good thing. However, they do not play in round 15, and that's the same week Tim English doesn't play. So I think Marshall's nearly impossible to pick, because I think everyone should have Gawn. And if you're going one of the more value options, you're trying to get English in. So the only way Marshall comes into play if English was to go down.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've got him number 3 as well. Just because of that high ceiling. It's just one of those players that just absolutely goes ham some weeks. And, on his off week, he still scrapes together a decent enough score when he does, everything. On an off week, though, you look at him and it's like nothing's going right. And you're like, what's going on? But he still seems to scrape together a good enough score, which then really helps balance out and offset the big games that he has. And when he's on, and he's just racking up points left, right, and center. And you're like, holy crap, this guy's going crazy. It's one or the other. Like, in some weeks, he looks so kind of a bit average, but still scores okay. So for me, yeah, that high ceiling factor, I'm with you, Swizz. I'd like to start him. And if you're starting him, you're pretty much just trying to go, okay, I'm going to spend the extra money and I'm going to fade a Gawn, and I'm just going to back this guy in for the whole season and just hope to get lucky because of the lower ownership. That's kind of the only reason I would think that people would. Again, try not to get too complicated with the ruck line as well this time of year. If they're high owned and they're a good value point, say like Gawn, then you probably have more to lose in not picking him rather than trying to go left field and getting creative, because if Gawn fires, you are so far behind a large portion of the competition where it gets really hard to kind of catch up. Whereas if he doesn't fire, you're with a whole bunch of other people and you just kind of jump off or trade early. And you and Chris did that really successfully. I think it was last year or the year before, and I held on for dear
with Grundy into Darcy Cameron.
And I held on for dear life and rode that train down a little bit more. Yep. So, yeah, that's 3 and 3 for that. Now, number 4, I've got an interesting one. Now, I think the guy that you're talking about, the Love, I think it's like a Briggs brother Love that you kind of, everyone seems to be getting these vibes on him. I don't have him quite yet, Swizz.
Okay.
For me, I've got Witts up and into that 4 spot, tapping down to an extremely good midfield, which got absolutely dominated, by the way, from GWS, but I still think they're a talented midfield. Probably Essendon-esque, I think, as far as just maybe a bit soft. Gold Coast, like, I don't know, like they're tough, they're strong, they're contested ball players, but then how do you get beaten up so easily? Like, where is that someone to kind of really plant that foot and to have that sort of substance and that vigor and that grit to just be like, enough is enough, and we are not going to be pushed around. We are not losing the center clearance or contested ball by 44 or whatever it was. Horrible. So for me, I think the new ruck rule where you actually are able to use your levers to kind of hold them off. Witts is a monster, and he's an experienced monster with great hands. He used to just tap it at his feet because they didn't want the ball to get on the outside. Whereas now he can go short, he can go long, he can go behind. He's got literally the longest levers since Lever in the Melbourne backline just to actually use that. And that's where I think that there is value in him. He was it second highest overall, I think, a couple of years ago. So I think he could get back around a decent kind of 115-ish mark if everything goes his way. So I know he had injuries last year, but for me, he's the dark horse who I'd like to back in, but again, I just can't. Do you have Witts at all?
When I first did the list, I had him at 6. And by the end of when I was shopping, I put him back down to 8. I don't know if I want him at 6 or want him at 8 because I feel like there's not a lot of difference there. The good and the bad with Witts, as you said, he will monster these ruck contests. He will get the lion's share up against nearly every ruck in the competition. He doesn't hurt teams around the ground. That is not his game. He is all center square. So he can get a lot of +5s, get out to advantage. But he's not a double a double number possession game. It's like 8, 9, maybe takes a couple marks. That's it. The other thing that got me thinking was Dimmer and Rucks. And we had Marriage, Nank. I don't know if Dimmer values the big key superstar ruck. It's always was value with us.
Oh, hey, Briggs feels pretty special.
But we're talking about Dimmer.
Briggs? No. Bloody not Briggs. Bloody, who was the Richmond guy?
We had Nan Curvis.
No. Who was the chop out guy?
Soldo. Or no, you're talking about Griggs.
Griggs. See, look.
Sean Griggs.
It's that time of night, man. I am making, I can't remember players' names.
Yeah.
What's going on, Swizz? Right, yeah. So
that was just like the way Dimmer used to play the game plan. And we always played that second ruck. Like we had Sean Grigg back in the day. We played a lot of Soldo the last couple of years, even though a lot of the supporters were like, why are we trying to play the 2 ruck system? I don't think there's probably an obvious second ruck there, but it wouldn't surprise me at some point. Maybe Dimmer tries to, invent something. It's just kind of always been his game style. So there's a little bit of me that's worried about potentially, does he look at something like that? And Witts is obviously getting on now in years as well. So does he try to blood Moyle? We saw him, I think, for a game or 2 last year. I don't know. So, yeah, I'm more comfortable just having Witts at 8 because I think there's some question marks about what his role could look like depending on how the Suns go this first year under Dimmer.
I don't think they can play Moyle with him. I'd be more concerned.
No, I don't think they can play with him.
Yeah.
But could they rest him potentially games? Or do they look at, is there a second ruck that comes in? Do they start looking at some games, go, okay, maybe they can put Lukosius or something like that through the ruck in the last quarter?
I reckon Reed, the new draft pick, playing key defense,
or someone like that. And does Witts maybe get subbed off at 3/4 time if they need a bit more speed? They do play a lot of games like Cairns, Darwin. Does that help with Witts being out there because of slippery conditions? Does it also help that they might need a bit more speed on the ball in those situations? So I've just got a few question marks, and that's no dig at Witts and his ability in the ruck because I think he's a fantastic ruckman, but I just don't know about how Dimmer's going to, the game plan around him.
I heard he didn't even nearly get to Darwin last year. The plane was too small for his feet, so his legs were too long, so he nearly had to get chartered in there for the 2-week stint. I agree with you there. Now, Reed would be the one if he maybe bulks up a little bit enough to get his ruck craft up, but he was a Blixarves kind of defender, mid, ruck kind of sort of person, tall, mobile, gets his own clearance. So he's the one for me that they are trying to work him into defense to sort of work those structures and learn those systems. So if he does actually end up having a key post in defense, he is one that could actually start to maybe second chop out. So, but until then, I think he's someone that probably scores well enough for me to be around that spot. Who's your number 4?
Yeah, it's Briggs.
Briggs, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. The guy, just because of his age, like I've got only in a couple keepers. I just,
He's a monster.
He's a monster. Bruce isn't coming in to take points off him. Flynn left because they know Briggs is the number one guy now. And he's hitting down to one of the best midfielders in the competition and one of the best midfielders straight out in Tom Green.
Josh Kelly.
And Josh Kelly Canelio. You can name them all, but yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of Briggs down to Tommy Green this year, and I can't. If it wasn't for the fact if Grundy was still at Melbourne and we still had this Gawn Grundy situation, just because Briggs' buy is different to Marshall, I would have probably gone there instead of Marshall. But you can't go Briggs because he's got that early buy anyway, and there's too many other better options for value. But I love him.
Fair.
I think he's going to
be Briggs for me is number 5.
Yep.
Yeah, again, just a real strong competitive beast that has some absolute big games. Now, I think the rule as well will help. Someone that throws their weight around like that and actually has good mobility as well with that weight. And then when you have Mumford coaching you, like it's, you're an absolute pit bull, you're a wrecking ball, you're a fridge with legs. I just think he's, got way too much talent. He's been biding his time, and I think it's now clear, as you said, ruck number 1, where pretty much everyone else, I mean, Paul Pruce, Melbourne could use a second ruck right now. He's gone from one club thinking, I need some opportunities, and next minute he's gone to a club, and all of a sudden he's like, I can knock off Flynn, and next minute Briggs just shows up, and Flynn's like, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to West Coast, where they keep people fit and healthy. Anyway, so it's that's me for number 5. So I do really rate that one. Number 5 for you, though, Swizz.
If this was on total points, I think this guy would be 18th. But on average, he's at 5, and that's Shrek, Big Sean Darcy.
Okay.
The guy's a beast. It's just the question mark for his whole career is how many games did you get out of him? It's as simple as that.
That literally is the question. And again, he's someone I think that ruck rule could definitely benefit. He almost reminds me of when we speak about Marshall. There are some games where he's just on and firing, and there are some games where he just goes and disappears. Except Marshall at least seems to scrape together a high 80, low 90 if he's having a poor week, whereas Darcy can just spud completely. And if he isn't doing well, I mean, you imagine if Fremantle moving the ball slow like they like to last year and haven't changed this year, and if the game's in the balance, surely they need to change something up, and they might end up throwing Darcy forward and throwing Jackson in the ruck, or they might move him completely. I don't know. But, I do really rate what he can do. I just hope he stays on the park. So for me, if he's fit and firing, as you said, for me, he's number 6. And he is someone that can average really well.
Like somebody was saying to me, they were looking at him and then they saw the score on the weekend of 52, and I was like, yeah, but that was from like less than 40% game time. It might have been around the 40% mark, and still managed to score 52 in that slight period.
He started really bad last year too, remember? And people were talking about, and I said, get off, Darcy.
But the thing is, he barely played in that practice match. So he, compared to some of those other rucks who were playing like 80%, if he played 80% of the weekend, he's probably going 110. So, but is that just the fact that they're still trying to manage him because we just know, he's unfortunately he's just got so many issues with his body, and it'd be awesome to see him play a full season. But then we said similar about Tim English last year. Or don't know about picking him because he never plays every game, and then he played every game, and look what happened. He went, was it nearly 125? So Darcy could potentially do that if he was able to stay on the park.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And English, obviously concussion and all the rest of it, is an interesting one. So I've already gone with was it number 6? Number 5 was Darcy, wasn't it? So so number 6 for me.
Darcy. Yep.
Okay. So, and I had 5 with Briggs. So who's your number 6?
My 6 is, have you said your 6 yet?
I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 6 was Darcy.
Okay, your 6 was Darcy. And looks like we're going to have a special guest come join us maybe.
Oh, he is.
Continuous.
Hang on, let's go here. We'll have add to stage.
Yeah, we do have a special guest.
I made it.
I'm
actually not ready. I didn't think it'd jump in that quickly. Hold on one sec.
That's easy enough. Here we go. Remove, push him backstage. Bye, Chris. Get yourself ready. get
Yeah, so
backstage. I noticed he's got the sleeveless as
does.
well. I mean, Ed Langdon would be very upset with the no sleeves.
I'm surprised how many clothes he's got on at the moment. It's very unlike Chris.
He loves the caps at the moment. Can he hear us? I don't know if he can if he's on stage. Not if you can hear us.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
he
he
can.
thumbs up. No, I think he
Yeah.
thumbs up because he's given us the nod. Can you hear
is
us?
he?
I don't know. He's got a lot of caps as
No,
well. Or
he
he's
does.
ready. I don't know. Okay,
So
so
for
6, Darcy, for you
No, yeah, so
was
6 I had Grundy.
okay. And I've got Grundy in 7. So, which is interesting because I know he's a great price point. So are you starting Grundy as a cash cow and then hoping to move him as soon as, say, English drops 100, he goes up 50 to 100, and then kind of hope that they meet halfway in a nice Grundy English sandwich?
That's exactly what I'm hoping for. Like,
And
there's
very
no doubt.
soon, right? Like you're hoping sort of what, 6th round in or
I'm
something
hoping
rather, or by the bye.
by round 5. I don't think it's going to come that early. That'd be the perfect world. But at some point around that mark, you got to be thinking about it. I don't see him as being a season keeper. Like at least he was tackling in his game, so definitely somebody to at least look at. The fixture early is not too bad. Like it's where I think we got round 2 because round 0, round 1. So round 0 doesn't count
Grundy.
against Gawn, so we don't need to stress about that. So then he plays the Pies, which will be Cameron, Mason Cox, Bombers, probably Goldie at that point. Richmond, don't know if it'll be Nank or Naismith. Then it's the Eagles. I think that's something that we're kind of looking at for that game where it's probably going to be a Bailey Williams. So he's probably got a big chance to have a big spike coming in there. It's not the easiest draw compared to some of the other rucks, and that's probably got me a little bit concerned. So I've actually been tinkering about not starting him, and I'll talk about what the ruck I'm starting later. But I can see the appeal, as you said, trying to get Grundy up to English.
My concern is that when he plays West Coast just the round before their bye, he's going to score so well that I'm going to feel compelled to keep him for another couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So you're saying that if he is someone that you are trying to flip and upgrade to get to another premium soon, is that why you possibly instead looking at a Cherry or someone that's cheaper just because you're not keeping Grundy anyway?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So if you're not going to keep him and you're going to upgrade, it's like, well, Cherry might make me slightly more cash and free up more cash preseason anyway. And if you are looking at that kind of play, it makes sense because, with the magic number, those premiums are going to come down in price. That's why you have your Olivers in previous years and your Bontempellis jumping from, 700K, get down to 630, 640K, and they're still averaging extremely well. It's just about that magic number and actually kind of suppressing the higher scorers down. And then you're trying to hope that someone picks up a little bit of cash while the others come down, and then you make your 100K a bit of a different way. So, Chris, we've gone through our top 7 so far, or 6. You got Grundy at 6, right?
Yeah, I did.
All right, Rucks, we're going all the way to 10.
We're going
we've
to
got 8, dude, because there's so many of them. And Grundy's so relevant, but he's not top 5. So we'll give you a moment to catch up, and we'll also get your forward thoughts as well.
Do you actually not have Grundy in the top 5? Are you actually
No, tell us why Grundy's top 5. And I'll tell you, here's who I've got.
Yeah.
English, Gawn, Marshall, Witts, Briggs, Darcy.
And I've got English.
Grundy.
I've got English, Gawn, Marshall, Briggs, Darcy. So far.
So you're going from top to bottom?
Yeah.
Yep. It's the only way to go. You got to keep it clean.
I do actually have a top 7.
That's good because we've got top 8. So you're on the money.
So where's Grundy then for you?
That just blows my mind. I think you guys are well overselling how good Rucks are this year, to be fair. Do you have ranges on what you think everyone averages?
I think English is still
140.
around 120. I think he comes down a bit, but he's still
around 120. Yeah. So I will go through. So I think Gawn is the number 1 ruck this year. I've got him averaging 118 as the number 1. I think rucks do come down slightly. So few reasons why, and I will get into it if you really want me to. But I've got Gawn at number 1 at 118. I've got English at 116, slightly less. Marshall at number 3 at 115. Then I've got Grundy at 112 and Briggs at 110 as my top 5.
So, Chris, I missed the start of that because of my Wi-Fi. What did you say English was?
116.
Okay.
Yeah, so English was second. Gawn was
English
118. Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
Gawn won, yeah. And then I've got essentially Witts and Darcy both sharing the same position of 105. So a little bit of a drop off from Briggs. So yeah, I think the top 5 is
105.
yeah. So I just
Yeah,
well,
so
Witts,
Chris,
there's-
so we're because I got cut off there. So I was saying English drops down to about 120, which I can see Gawn getting close to. I feel like Gawn's at 116 to 120 player. Marshall back again, closer between about 110 and 114, somewhere around there. And then I do think there's a bit of a drop off, but Briggs I still think it could get around that 1.5 to 1.8 mark, and then there is Darcy a little bit behind that. But Darcy's all depend because I find it really hard to range Darcy because it's
so
not
hard.
about it's just about how many games. Like I was saying to Ben before, Tim English we didn't think would play 23 games. Darcy might do it one year. If he does it, he could go to the moon, but he just never does.
So I find the same problem with Darcy, the same problem I have with English at the moment, which is why I find that they're both slightly dropping, and that's their ruck splits changed. So have you guys had a look at any of the ruck stats from the weekend?
Yeah, see, Darcy's only played 40% on time, but I think that was more of his. That was his more of managing his body more than anything.
So Darcy obviously is going to continually go down. They're trying to find a sweet point with him and Luke Jackson because they obviously want to play Luke Jackson in there as well. Now, the actual average, I think last year ended up being when they played together was about 75-25%. And that's the split that that English had this weekend just gone with Lob. And that was floated in the preseason with Lob getting more ruck time. So English having less time in the ruck, and that's flagged already in the first preseason game. They talked about it already. So look, does it impact his average hugely? No, but enough to, in my opinion, drop to that sort of somewhere between 115 and 120. I've got him at 116.
That's why I've gone the 5 to 10% rule there with it, Chris, because I'm not too 100% sure if it's going to be every week. And I said to Ben earlier, I think English comes back a little bit. In particular, your Gawn, your big matchups, your Gawns, your Marshalls, your Briggs, Darcys, whatever. But he's still got the ability to get hurt around the ground against your Reeves and your Williams and stuff. So I think English, especially his top end might even be, his top end might even be higher. But I think those, the other games where he's still going like 115 probably come back to 100 as they try to balance the ruck time.
He probably goes up in average, boys. He'll miss out on a hit out to advantage and kick a goal. He'll be fresh as he'll kick a goal and then go charge into the middle. This is my CBA now.
Yeah, look,
that's how it's done.
I don't know. Yes, it could, but the only one that really from that list that has noticeable upside based on what happens in the off season is obviously Max Gawn. He has the most potential upside of all of them, which is why I've gone for him back to number 1. And look, I'm only putting him at 118. There's every chance that Max Gawn goes up to say 125, 130, like legitimately. There's no dude. This guy's second rucking for the Demons right now is Josh Shackey.
Shackey,
and
Chris,
you
really
until Fullerton's fit and Shackey will be out of that side.
But
because he rucks so much with Brisbane, right?
Chris, so you missed it earlier.
He was a basketballer, Category B rookie who has now got traded to Melbourne, and either way, he is better than Pendlebury. B, everyone's better than Shackey. Shackey is only getting a gig because Brown's injured. Everyone is injured in Melbourne. Literally, Shackey will not play.
Yeah.
No, I believe you, but when is he? When's Fullerton coming back?
But it's going to make no difference anyway. So Chris, what you missed me talking about before, I was saying I went down and watched Gawn play against the Tigers down at Casey. Half time, they had to stop him from running laps because he was just monstering around that ground, continuing to get his fitness up, which he looked super fit. And I watched him get really annoyed when he lost a ruck contest to Samson Ryan, probably the only one he lost for the day. Like the fact that he was that competitive in a match sim showed I was like, well, this guy is back. He's hungry and he could go anything this year.
Yeah. And so Locke.
Look, and how is he not in everyone's team? How is Gawn not in everyone's team right now?
I think he'll increase after round 0.
Why should we get Grundy though, Chris? It's a long sell.
So
Grundy, tell me.
Well, I mean, he's in my opinion the most valuable. He's the only value ruck that is also a potential keeper. So if 80K means the be all and end all to your team, then I don't actually mind going Cherry from Grundy. That is neither here nor there. But you're not going to get a keeper out of Cherry. I think he's a 95 to 100 averaging ruckman at best, and that's too far off the pace to be eligible to be a keeper premium, right? Whereas Brodie Grundy, we know even in his bad season as a solo ruck, he was averaging about 115. Now I don't think he can necessarily get to that heights, but we are obviously playing at the SCG, obviously with Sydney's brand, and they obviously like a stoppage type football. The one caveat to this is, how much does it impact if they do play a 2-ruck system, and how much solo ruck time does he get? I've gone with 112, and that's under what I think he could potentially go. So, yeah, I think that you'd be underselling yourself to say you're writing off Brodie Grundy off of one preseason game. And not to mention as well, what we know, and you definitely know, Ben, is that the big guys, especially Brodie Grundy and Max Gawn, don't necessarily hit the lights out straight away. So I'm completely fine with at least seeing Grundy until his bye and then flipping if I need to. But at very least, he's still going to make money till his bye. So
and again, they play West
I'm
Coast just before the bye, and he went 140 against them last year when they also had issues there.
Yeah, the big caveat's probably Briggs. I think Briggs could be anything, but he played 17 games, and I owned him. Obviously, I think a lot of people did own him, but yeah, as the season wore on, his scoring started to deteriorate. Now, I just don't know if he has the tank to run out 24 games. But it'll be interesting to see how much he can progress. 105 average. I think for the first 5 or 6 games, he was averaging like 120, 130, right? So like he's got a big scope to improve. And we'll see, the guy rucking for him at the moment is Cadman. So he's doing, 80, 90% ruck work. We'll have to, monitor that and see if that means that, he's a potential, top 2, top 3 ruckman. But unfortunately,
and Cadman didn't even do well either, Chris, because he had, I think it was 14 to 16 like contests and won 4. So he got pretty much dominated anytime Cadman sort of went in there anyway. So, you wouldn't want to be honestly, like much.
The rest of the rucks are somewhere between 90 to 105 and don't really, they're not, I don't think they're going to do much. There's some interesting ones in there in terms of, what they can do based on their price point, but there's not really going to be much competition to the top 3 spots, top 3, 4 spots. So I honestly think that the 5 is pretty much locked. Outside of that, you just sort of, I don't know who's paying 600 grand for Jared Witts or 600 grand for Sean Darcy on like a potential maybe upside. This just doesn't make sense to be doing that.
No, I'm kidding. Swizz, just we'll round it off and then we'll have a chat anyway. So 7 and 8 for you. Well, where were you sitting?
So we had Witts at 8 anyway, but the big one we didn't talk about was Cherry. And yeah, you're right a bit about that. What that 80K could potentially do. It's either getting somebody, one of the, I guess you could say Uber premiums up to Bont, or it's one of the rookies up to one of those premium rookies. So I've been playing around a little bit with that because that 80K actually has been doing a bit for my team. But I also like the his draw compared to Grundy's early.
I don't think I like the use of the word premium on a rookie there, Swizz. You have a rookie and an expensive rookie. I don't know if the maybe premium. Rookie,
but McCurcher and Harley Reid are kind of premium rookies in a way.
Premium fuel still gets you to the same place.
But yeah, like Cherry early on after, so it is Briggs and kind of Darcy to start off, but then it's Pitternet, the Lions, the Cats, which will be either Stanley or Conway. The Hawks will be Reeves. So it's not a bad sort of run. If you're going to probably get rucks outside of not playing West Coast, he's probably got the best ruck run of those sort of guys in that price range. So that's where it's kind of tempting a little bit more compared to Grundy's run, who does have quite a tough run. It's kind of like one tough game, one easier game back and forward. So no, not to say Grundy still can't go well in them, but I think it could be like 1 week Grundy 120, the next week maybe back to like 195, just balances back like that. So I think there's potential for just as much growth from Cherry during those rounds if I was looking at flipping him to English anyway.
See, I don't know. I think Cherry's okay. I just think he's a bit of a trap as far as consistency for me. Now, Chris, I don't think Grundy would have got sold from Melbourne to Sydney for him to be sharing ruck.
It's
Yeah,
it's the
if
thing is
anything,
like
he'll rest on the sideline if anything, and I think it'll be McLean will be the one sort of chopping out the other part there, but I think Grundy will have to have the lion's share. Just has to.
look, I do agree, but the thing is, Laddams is an absolute useless player if he's not in the ruck, and he's not even a very good one. So
He's a useless player.
Oh,
Full stop. That's the sentence.
he's backup, right? Like so that's why I found it interesting that they played him in the practice game, especially considering there is only one practice game. So like I know people say, oh, it's just a practice game. With only one official practice match, most teams have used it as an absolute like tune-up. Like they're trying to get their 22 settled. They're not trying something out of the box that they haven't already done in preseason for the last few months. It's very rare for that. So I do need to monitor that. I mean, look, again, I hate to keep harping on about this, and I think everyone's in the same boat, but we get round 0. So we get another look at Grundy and his role. And if Laddams is, rucking 25, 30% and it doesn't look like Grundy's going to be the 80, 85% ruckman that he should be in order to be a premium, then it may just be worth just jumping on Cherry, grabbing the cash because you're going to grab more cash and maybe not lose that many points. And then, upgrade him to a Briggs or to a English or whoever is going to be the dominant ruck for the season. So, look, I'm not 100. All I'm judging Grundy on is if he is primary ruck, if he's an 80% ruckman like he should be, he should average over 110 with relative ease. Because even when he was averaging, just before he got injured, I think he was, even pies, and they started, rucking him with Darcy Cameron. Over the first, I think, 5 or 6 grand, he was still averaging 115. And we were like, oh, that's so shit. Because we all paid like, what, $700K for him or whatever. And he was only averaging us 115. Now that's kind of gold, right? So yeah, we got to be hold it with a little bit of just caution at this stage.
Caution.
But yeah,
and you're right, because
absolutely.
round 0 could change everything on that. And the hard thing is Grundy is going up against Gawn first game, so it's going to be harder to probably get a read. But in the
They
same time,
typically
if it
have
goes
great
really
battles,
well,
though. Yeah.
yeah,
They typically have really good, like
They
where they both offensively have a go at each other, and obviously they know each other very, very well now. I'm actually so looking forward to that.
It'll be good. We do need to kind of quickly just jump in as we finish round 0. I've had a few people comment as well on YouTube. People somehow are a little bit confused as far as what round 0 is, what it means, what it's going to cost them. It's a free look. It's a free hit. There's unlimited trades, as if picture it like there's a practice match before you pick your team, except it counts for their 3-round price changes. That's pretty much what it counts for. So you get a free look at them 8 teams playing an actual game to then go, oh, I like their role. Oh, they scored really well. So if Grundy goes a 120, it's an easy scenario. You bring him in your side, and the only actual lockout for your team is once they play in round 1. So when is it Richmond Carlton as always, round 1?
Yep.
They play each other. Once that game and once that bounce starts, Richmond and Carlton players will then be locked in their positions in your side, and then you can keep having unlimited trades until each and every team plays for that week. All right, so that's the benefit. So some people are a little bit concerned, thinking they have to have them in their side now. You don't. You get a free look, you get a free hit, and that's why we talk about being flexible, because next week there's going to be so much content coming at you. Like literally everyone's going to be trying to put out content, rookies, premiums, mid-prices. This is what they scored in round 0. This is their role in round 0. What the hell's going on? This confirms things. This is surprising. It's crazy. So next week's going to be absolutely full, which is why we wanted to get our top 10s out this week, because next week people don't want to hear about top 10s. They want to hear about what the hell went on in round 0 and how can we fix our side.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
Agreed.
That wraps us up for that part. Chris, do you have your top 10 forwards on hand by any chance? Because I know I could almost take the arse end of this and throw it into the back end of the other video. But
look, what's funny? So I did like a little for our normal draft league that we did. I generally write a number next to every single player in the league as to like what I think they'll average. And I was so unprepared for draft that I actually just rocked up and just started going through like frantically putting numbers in and just like not getting it right. And because of that, I only got through like the first like 50, and I don't think there was many forwards because they were so shit this year. But I will go through. It's so bad. Like
I love it.
How about we tell you the
great.
surprising 3? We'll tell you the surprising 3. So
I
number 1,
I do have a top 4.
Let Chris go first, and then we'll
Yep.
continue with
I have a
surprise.
top 4. All right.
Okay.
I actually have Shy Bolton as number 1.
Ooh.
So that might be-
5. I had him 6, but yeah, go on.
So I then have Dusty slightly behind him. Now this
I've got him
this
in-
was all done.
Yeah.
I don't
got
look.
Dusty
I don't
third.
actually. I don't know what role Dusty's going to play, but he didn't
That's what
really
we just
light it
talked
up last week. I mean, the most Dane Swan game I've ever seen in my life, where he just didn't care about a preseason. But okay. I then have Luke Jackson because I think that he might get a little bit of a bump this year. Natural progression. Also, Darcy gets injured and then he just goes on a tear. And then I've got Jack McRae. So those are my top 4. Outside of that, it starts to go pear-shaped. I actually have Zach Fisher at number 5. So I have him averaging about 93. So not super high, but like that's just.
Swizz had him number 1,
right?
Chris.
I got him
Swizz had the
one.
audacity to
Yeah.
have him number 1
Did you
overall.
do
Mate.
that just to piss off Ben? Because I love it.
No, it's because what did JP and I were talking about before on here? What did
What did
Zebo
JP
average?
have
What
here?
did like top 3? I think it
Oh,
was not
Zebo
like
went
maybe.
what? Just
Zebo
under
went
100.
like
I think 98 or something like
and
that.
100 and something, and Aaron Hall went
Yeah.
100 and I think Aaron Hall's true average without getting injured was like 114 and 108, and that 2 years in a row. Like,
Here's the thing with Fisher that I didn't know that he had. Thank you so much. I didn't know he was that much of a pig. He's like, dude,
Yeah,
he's running
yeah.
to every space available just to get the
So
ball.
that-
He's like,
and
oh, I'm
that's
over here.
why
I'm over here. I'm
like-
over here.
So we said in the forwards chat, podcast. So Grimo was so big on this on the chat. He's like, you guys will have him locked in after you watch 1/4 of him, because we were watching him in some intra club and he literally took the kick out, got the ball back, gave it to LDU, got the ball back, had 3 touches in the space of 15 seconds. Like, this guy is a fantasy pig.
Dude, he literally just watched Jack Zeeble highlights for the last 3 years.
It's like
and
that.
went,
So the only
Did the
thing
Gary
Biggest goal of
Ablett.
all time.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you on your back foot, so you have
Yeah.
to give it back to me as I run past you.
Chris, the only thing that's stopping him going number 1 is his body. If his hammies hold up, this guy's going to the moon.
Number 1 for average, number 28 for total points. Is that right?
Probably.
Chris?
I feel like that could be the situation.
Could be. Look, I do have Flanders in the top 6 still as well.
I'll give him 2
look,
at the moment.
he could be 105. I just don't really know what's going on right now, and I'm so confused with Gold Coast after last week. I don't know how to read that Flanders game or his role. I have no idea what they're doing. Took sort of was playing a lot more midfield than I thought he would this year. Their backline was shuffled again. I honestly have no idea, man. So I've got him top 6. I think he will be top 6. So I think he's a safe selection if you're going that way.
Chris, for me, it went Fisher, Flanders, Dusty, Jackson, McRae, Bolton, Toby, Rankin, Sexton, and Owens. And only because you could throw a blanket over nearly all of it. Like, I'm talking 2 or 3 points between, and I know Ben had a couple others that I didn't have on the list, and same with JP. And I'm literally looking at like further down, going, I've got that player like 1 point or 2 points back on average, because
you know what there isn't
that's
this
the situation.
Year? There doesn't seem to be like the rumored midfielder that's going to be playing more forward time that might be sort of a split. Like last year we were sort of riding on the coattails of potentially getting a Petrarca, at 35% forward, and then who's that this year? It doesn't look like anyone at this stage.
Like, Rory Laird's the only rumored one.
Maybe.
And I don't think Laird's going to play that much forward.
And
like, not
conversely,
35%
there doesn't seem to be that many forwards that are playing majority mid. The only one that I've sort of thought of that may get there is maybe Tom Powell. But even Powell, he has a really, if you've looked at his stats, anytime that he's had more than 50% CBAs, he actually hasn't scored very well.
Yeah.
And his junior numbers are amazing. So I'm not sure what the disconnect is between that and AFL footy. But yeah, I just can't see it.
And that's why I put Rankin in there, because I'm like, he's the only one that says to me potentially, just because they need a little bit more spark. Like, I feel like Dawson and Laird are very similar. Crouch doesn't add to that. So do they? And I think Rochelle's a little bit too new. So do they just throw Rankin in a little bit more to add something a little bit different? So that's why I threw him into the top sort of 10 to go. There's potential there.
He could walk to the 10, to be honest. Like 10's going to be like what, 90? Like Jeremy Cameron, he's going to be around the mark,
splitting tens.
Literally, like, and so there's probably going to be about maybe 8 or 9 players between say 92 to 87. Are really going to be worried about that, and that's what sort of happens with say like a James Harms or a Jack Billings, who they may get close enough that you just go, do I really care about making a trade for 3 points a game? You know, like. Really? So
Chris,
even if
out
it's
of
like even at 8 or
10,
9 points a game, is it really like worth it? Because you're like, okay, over the last 10 weeks, that's 80 points. So like I can make that trade up or make those points up in another trade that I'm going to do. So
yeah, exactly.
you're like, is it really that worth it? Like, and I think we're going to be in that situation with one or two of these guys.
Chris,
you know, there's one
Fisher,
player that I didn't
Chris.
have in my top 10. I actually didn't have him in my top 30, but his name's Zach Bailey. I don't know if
Zach Bailey did not have him anywhere near it. Just can't see it.
All right, so these two are now muted, so you guys can now listen to me. Seeing I can't get a fucking question off, and I'm sitting here, I'm signing autographs on the screen. No one's even paying attention. Bloody drunk ass. Now, no, you can wait. You can wait. This is how we do things around here. All right. Fisher, 1 to 10 as far as my ranking. Chris, I'm talking to Chris at the moment, Swizz. Or I don't have him in my top 10. What do you recommend? You are now live, Chris.
I think you would have had him I reckon you would have just out of spite put him at 11 or something like that. Like honorable mention.
Honorable, you reckon? Honorable mentions.
Dishonorable
The forward
mention.
line is so crap, and I'm so desperate. I had him at 6 overall.
I love it. I love it.
Look, sometimes you're right. Like Zeeble, you're right, and sometimes I'm like, why do I hate this guy so much? I don't even know him. Like, why do I hate him so much? And then I'm like, watch the game. I'm like, yeah.
Dude, Harley Reid could be top 10.
I could, mate. It legitimately could.
Someone, one of those, like Fife and Harley Reid or someone could just be relevant enough to keep them, like we have done
James
before.
Jordan.
Yeah, James Jordan.
Dude, like,
yeah.
I don't know. This has never happened before in the history of Supercoach, but like, Fife winds the clock back and is averaging 112. Like you know what I mean? Like, holy, like.
Well, I said it before, Chris. I'm like, get on Brownlow number 3 this year. Like he's
legitimately has, like, I chatted to someone about this. Like, I know that he hasn't. I don't think he's scored a ton since 2021 or something stupid. Like. But if you have a look at like role, body, all of that, like I think he hasn't very much played, and when he has played, he's played predominantly as a forward since then. When was the last time he played 70% mid? Like it's so long ago, right? Yeah. He has I think what's his highest Supercoach average? Like 124 or something like that. Like
something
he went, yeah. Like, dude, he has the highest potential and highest ceiling out of any forward there. By an
Imagine thinking it's a joke too, having Fisher, F1, Fife in there with, say, Jordan, and then all of a sudden they're all averaging 95 to 105. And you just keep them. It would be like...
I thought, that was my...
Not even making a forward upgrade at all.
Do you have?
Yeah, pretty much. All right, that wraps us up. We'll look, that's it. The ruck line that was extended to get a little bit of extra Chris special coming on at the back end here, which is Chris's favorite move. Coming in on the back end. Chris, you put out your team reveal as well, so that was insightful. I see you put Elliot Yeo on your side finally, so kudos to you for following my strong trend early in the preseason on just speculation. Swizz, you're going to put yours out shortly as well?
Yeah, I've been trying to record it for 2 days, but hopefully I get it.
Well, you've been writing for the Herald Sun. You got to go to the official launch tomorrow.
We're in the presence of greatness. I forgot. Yeah.
Wait, excuse me. Say it in a supporting way. Say it in a supporting way, not in a spiteful.
I was expecting Ben to be more spiteful than you, Chris.
I'm just.
What? I'm happy
joking.
for everything that you have achieved. Thank you.
I absolutely love it, mate. You know, I'm glad that one of us lives in Melbourne to take advantage of this.
That's pretty well. That's all it is.
Oh, so you're saying if you lived in Melbourne, you'd be a bigger deal. Is that what you're saying?
Chris is kind of half these days, but it's, mate, we'd be like the Dr. Supercoach boys and have all 3 of us in if you guys were down here.
That's true. I think we have been invited. It's just hard, obviously, with the families and the travel and all the rest of it. So
I'm yet to meet someone who hasn't enjoyed having a beer with Chris, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, that's it from us. Go check out YouTube as well. The team reveals, it's our teams going into or after the preseason, should we say. And I imagine we'll also do another one as well next week once teams are announced or going into the final hurdle after round 0. Next week, we will be doing a lot of rookies, mid-prices, premiums, discussions around that, who we're liking and why. And I think that'll be really that focus part of it from that point forward. So that's it from us. Talk to you soon. Hope you've enjoyed. Let us know if you've liked this ruck scenario and the extra special feature. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.